The rain in Manhattan was a cold, unrelenting sheet of gray, turning the neon lights of Times Square into blurred, bleeding streaks of color. But in the penthouse of the Hotel Pierre, the world was silent, insulated by 3 inches of reinforced glass and the heavy, suffocating weight of a betrayal. Frank Costello sat in a wingback chair, the leather creaking softly as he leaned forward. Across from him sat Sal the Saint Moretti, a man who had earned his nickname not through piety, but through his uncanny ability to make people disappear without leaving a trace. Sal was trembling, though he tried to hide it by gripping the crystal glass of scotch in his hand. He had been caught, not by the police. And not by a rival family, but by the quiet, methodical shadow network of the Prime Minister himself. Costello didn't have a gun out. He didn't have his enforcers in the room. He simply sat there with a small, sleek black smartphone resting on the table between them, a device that felt more dangerous than a loaded shotgun. "You look tired, Sal," Costello said, his voice a low, melodic rasp that carried the chill of a winter grave. Betrayal is an exhausting business. Planning the meetings, keeping the secrets, wondering if every shadow has eyes. It takes a toll on a man's soul. Sal tried to swallow, but his throat felt like it was filled with dry sand. "Frank, I don't know what you think you heard. The rumors, they're just talk. I've been loyal for 20 years. I was with you in the 30s when the streets were running red." Costello smiled, a thin, razor-sharp expression that didn't reach his eyes. He reached out and pushed the phone across the polished mahogany table until it tapped against Sal's glass. 20 years is a long time, Sal. Long enough to build a kingdom, and long enough to forget who actually owns the land. I didn't bring you here to argue. I brought you here to give you a choice. This phone has exactly one contact in it. One name. One number. This person is the architect of your new life, or the executor of your final moments. I want you to pick it up, Sal. I want you to see who you've actually been working for. If you are watching this and you think you've seen every twist in the history of the Underworld, prepare yourself for a reality check that will leave you breathless. Most leaders use fear to control their men. Frank Costello uses the truth, and the truth is often far more terrifying than a bullet. We are breaking down a moment of total psychological collapse, where a master manipulator finds himself trapped in a web he didn't even know existed. If you want to understand how the Prime Minister stays 10 steps ahead of everyone else, if you want to see the moment a traitor realizes his secret partner was actually his greatest enemy, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now to join the elite inner circle who see through the lies. Like this video to show that you recognize the sheer brilliance of the Costello gambit. And I want you to go to the comments right now and type "contact" in all caps. Let's see who among you has the nerves to see the name on that screen. Now, let's go back to that penthouse, where Sal Moretti's world was about to vanish in a single click. Sal's hand shook as he reached for the phone. His mind was racing through a list of names. Was it Vito Genovese? Was it the head of the commission? Was it his own brother? He picked up the device, the screen glowing bright and cold in the dim room. He swiped the lock screen, his thumb leaving a smudge of sweat on the glass. He opened the Contacts app. There it was. One name. One single entry that made the Scotch glass slip from Sal's other hand and shatter on the floor, splashing amber liquid across his expensive shoes. Sal stared at the screen, his mouth falling open, his breath coming in short, jagged gasps. The name on the screen wasn't a rival Don. It wasn't a hitman. It was a name that made the entire conspiracy look like a puppet show where the strings had just been cut. The name was Anna Moretti, my daughter. Sal whispered, his voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. "You have my daughter's number in here?" "Frank, if you touched her, I swear to God." "I didn't touch her, Sal," Costello interrupted, his voice gaining a sudden, terrifying edge of authority. "I didn't have to. You see, Anna is a very bright girl. She went to the best schools, the ones I paid for. She has a very high sense of ethics, the ones I encouraged. When you started taking meetings in the back of that butcher shop in the Bronx, when you started moving the shipments behind my back, who do you think you were bragging to? Who do you think you were trying to impress with your new empire? Costello stood up, walking to the window to look out at the rain-soaked city. She didn't come to me because she hates you, Sal. She came to me because she loves the family you were about to destroy. She's been my primary informant for 6 months. Every move you made, every deal you brokered with the feds, she gave me the transcripts. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Sal collapsed back into his chair, the phone still glowing in his hand like a cursed object. His own flesh and blood. His pride and joy. The girl he thought he was building an empire for was the one who had dismantled it piece by piece. The betrayal he had committed against Costello was nothing compared to the betrayal his own daughter had committed against him to save the very man he was trying to kill. She told you everything? Sal asked, his eyes hollow and dead. Everything, Costello confirmed, turning back to face him. She told me about the warehouse in Jersey. She told me about the meeting at the docks tomorrow night. She even told me about that insurance policy you had hidden in your safe. But here's the most important part, Sal, she made me promise one thing. She said she'd give me your head on a platter, provided I didn't actually take it. Costello walked back to the table and leaned down, his face inches from Sal's. She bought your life with her loyalty. She traded her father's career for his heartbeat. So now, you're going to use that phone. You're going to call that number. And you're going to tell your daughter exactly what you are. You're going to confess to her, not to me. You're going to tell her why you thought money was worth more than her respect. And then, Costello's voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a blade against Sal's throat, you're going to follow the instructions she gives you. Because from this moment on, you don't answer to me. You answer to her. She is your handler. She is your warden. And if you ever disappoint her again, the next person you see won't be me, it'll be the man I send to clean up the mess you left behind. Sal looked at the phone, the name Anna staring back at him like a judge. He realized then that Frank Costello had achieved the ultimate victory. He hadn't just defeated a traitor, he had turned the traitor's own heart into a prison. He had outsourced the punishment to the only person Sal couldn't kill and couldn't hide from. With a shaking finger, Sal pressed the call button. The line began to ring, the sound echoing in the silent penthouse. Costello watched him for a moment, then picked up his own coat and walked toward the door. Answer it, Sal, Costello said as he stepped out into the hallway. It's time to find out what your legacy is really worth. The door clicked shut, leaving Sal Moretti alone in the dark, waiting for his daughter to pick up the phone and tell him his fate. The Prime Minister had walked away, leaving the most complex and agonizing execution in history to be carried out by a voice on the other end of a line. The ringing sound from the smartphone felt like an ice pick driving into Sal Moretti's temples. In the dimly lit penthouse of the Hotel Pierre, the silence was so absolute that he could hear the frantic, uneven thumping of his own heart against his ribs. Every second that passed felt like a year spent in solitary confinement. Finally, the line clicked open. There was no hello, no warmth, no familiar father-daughter affection. There was only the cold, sharp, and rhythmic breathing of a woman who had spent months watching her father sell his soul for a throne made of glass. Talk, Dad, Anna's voice came through the speaker, sounding nothing like the little girl he had raised, the one he had taught to ride a bike in Central Park. It was a voice forged in the shadow of the Prime Minister himself, precise, clinical, and utterly devoid of mercy. Sal's hand trembled so much he nearly dropped the device into the remains of his spilled scotch. Anna, honey. Frank told me, he said you were the one. Please, tell me he's lying. Tell me this is just one of his games. There was a pause, a silence so heavy and jagged it felt more painful than a direct hit from a .45 caliber bullet. I was the one who saved you, Dad, Anna finally replied, her tone as flat as a marble slab. And I'm the one who's going to keep you in a virtual cage for the rest of your life. You chose to play a game with the Prime Minister, a game you weren't smart enough to win. You thought you were building an empire, but you were just digging a mass grave for our entire name. Now, listen to me very carefully, you are going to do exactly what Mr. Costello says, or I will be the one to sign the order that puts you in the ground. I won't do it because I hate you. I'll do it because the Moretti name has to survive, even if you don't. Sal Moretti, a man who had survived the bloody gang wars of the 1930s and ordered dozens of men to their deaths without a flicker of hesitation, began to weep. It wasn't the weeping of a repentant man, but the broken, hollow sobbing of a man who realized he had lost the only thing that made him human. He had lost his daughter's respect. And in the underworld, that was a death far more permanent than physical extinction. Frank Costello, standing outside in the hallway, listened through the heavy, reinforced oak door for a brief moment. He didn't feel joy, and he didn't feel malice. He felt the cold, quiet satisfaction of a master engineer who had just repaired a vital piece of machinery. By using Anna, he hadn't just neutralized a traitor, he had performed a psychological lobotomy on the Genovese rebellion. Sal was now a dead asset, a man who was technically breathing but was functionally a ghost to the enemies of the Prime Minister. If you are watching this and you are beginning to realize that the most effective way to control a man is not through his fear of a bullet, but through his devotion to his legacy, then you are finally witnessing the true genius of the Costello doctrine. Most bosses would have left Sal face down in a New Jersey swamp. But Frank? He understood that a dead body creates a martyr and fuels a vendetta. A broken father, however, creates a permanent warning. We are breaking down the blood inheritance trap, a high-level strategy where you turn an enemy's own family into their warden, making the betrayal so personal that there is no possibility of a comeback. If you want to learn how to build a network of loyalty that transcends even the deepest blood ties, if you want to see how to make your rival's own children report to you, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now to join the elite league of global strategists. Like this video to show that you recognize the bloodline betrayal as the ultimate checkmate. And I want you to go to the comments right now and type legacy in all caps. Let's see who among you has the vision to see the trap before it snaps. Now, let's see the total systemic collapse Costello orchestrated for the streets of New York. While Sal was being psychologically dismantled by his own daughter's voice, Costello's machine was moving into a devastating next phase. He didn't just want Sal neutralized, he wanted the entire Genovese plot incinerated to the roots. Using the precise transcripts and audio recordings Anna had provided over the last 6 months, Costello's shadows began a series of surgical strikes across the 5 boroughs. They didn't use the noisy methods of the past, no Tommy guns, no drive-bys, no burning buildings. They used the invisible hand of administrative destruction. By 3 a.m., the FBI was raiding the exact warehouses Sal had promised to deliver to the Genovese faction. The shipments of illegal narcotics and untaxed cigarettes were seized, but with a twist that only Costello could conceive. When the federal agents opened the crates, they didn't just find contraband, they found the Costello gift. Tucked inside the false bottoms were encrypted files and ledgers detailing every corrupt payment Vito Genovese had made to city councilmen, judges, and high-ranking police officials over the last decade. Costello wasn't just taking out a traitor, he was purging the city's political infrastructure of anyone who had ever thought about siding with his rivals. He used the law to destroy the lawless. Vito Genovese woke up to a world that had been completely reconfigured while he slept in his silk sheets. His insider Sal Moretti was missing, his millions in shipments were in federal custody, and his network of political protection was currently being read their Miranda rights. The Prime Minister hadn't just defended his throne, he had launched a counter-offensive that bypassed the street level entirely and struck at the very foundations of Genovese power. By dawn, the whisper on the streets of Little Italy was that Sal Moretti had retired to the countryside for health reasons, and his daughter, Anna, had been appointed as the sole liaison for the Moretti interests, reporting directly and exclusively to Frank Costello. 2 weeks later, the chaos had settled into a new, quiet order. Frank Costello sat in a small, sun-drenched cafe in the heart of the city, sipping a perfectly brewed espresso. Across from him sat Anna Moretti. She was dressed in a sharp, charcoal-grey professional suit, her eyes reflecting the same ironclad discipline and detached intelligence that Costello himself possessed. She didn't look like a girl who had just betrayed her father. She looked like a CEO who had just completed a successful merger. She handed him a thick, leather folder. "My father is at the estate in the Catskills," she said, her voice steady and without a hint of tremor. "There is no phone line. There is no internet. He is surrounded by the gardeners who report only to me. He spends his days looking at the mountains and his nights realizing that he no longer exists in the world he tried to conquer. He knows that if he even steps foot past the gate, I am the one who will make the final call to the janitors. Costello nodded slowly, setting his cup down with a delicate click. You did a hard thing, Anna. A thing that most people, even the men who call themselves tough, would have been too weak to consider. But you chose the survival of the structure over the greed of the individual. You chose the legacy over the man. That is the definition of a leader. He looked out at the street, watching the world move on, oblivious to the silent coup that had just taken place. Your father was a saint of disappearance, a man who could hide anything. But you? You are something far more valuable. You are the architect of preservation. You have ensured that the Moretti name continues under my banner, rather than burning out in a Genovese fire. Anna looked at him, a brief, fleeting flicker of sadness passing through her eyes, a ghost of the daughter she used to be, before it was replaced by a cold, permanent resolve. I didn't do it for your approval, Frank. I did it because I saw what he was becoming. He was going to start a war that would have turned the streets of New York into a slaughterhouse, and my brothers would have been the first ones to die in the crossfire. I sacrificed one man's freedom to save an entire bloodline. If that makes me a traitor in his eyes, I can live with that. As long as the family lives, Costello smiled, a rare, genuine expression of respect from a man who had seen everything. That is exactly why you are in charge now. The Genovese family is currently paralyzed. They're afraid of their own shadows, looking at their own children and wondering which one of them is talking to me. That fear, that's what creates the peace. You've given me a weapon more powerful than 1,000 soldiers, the fear of the dinner table. He stood up, placing a firm, reassuring hand on her shoulder. The city is quiet today because of you, Anna. Never forget that Anna Moretti Gambit became a legend, a ghost story whispered in the backrooms of social clubs for decades to come. It taught every soldier and captain in the 5 boroughs that Frank Costello's eyes were not just on the streets, they were in their homes, at their weddings, and in their children's schools. He had proven that he didn't need to be a tyrant to rule with an iron grip, he just needed to be the one who offered a more stable future than his rivals. He had turned the most sacred bond in human existence, the love between a father and daughter, into a strategic fortress that no enemy, no matter how brutal, could ever hope to breach. As Costello walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan that afternoon, the sun reflecting off the towering skyscrapers, he felt the city breathing in perfect rhythm with his own footsteps. He had survived the ultimate betrayal, purged the infection of the Genovese rebellion, and installed a new generation of sophisticated loyalists who understood that the old ways of mindless violence were dead. That Prime Minister was more than a man now, he was a god of the long game, and New York was his temple. He had given a traitor a phone with one contact, and in doing so, he had dialed the number of a new era. As the sun set, painting the Hudson River in shades of deep crimson and gold, Frank Costello knew his throne was absolute. The peace was expensive, the cost was high, but for the House of Costello, the bill had been paid in full, and the legacy was secure for another century.